Mary Lou's Cook here. Welcome on into the Week 11 edition of FCS ALL-IN. As always, in store for you today are segments from the conferences around the FCS and contributions from national correspondent Sam Herder of Hero Sports and Craig Haley of Stats Perform. With the regular season winding down and the road to Frisco, Texas drawing nearer, it's time to go all in.
Welcome to Valley Football's Extra Point. Less than 2 weeks until the FCS selection show, and it was the wildest week of MVFC play yet, as 5 Valley teams have 2 or less conference losses. Of those 5 teams, North Dakota State is the lone squad that can control its fate for an outright conference title should it win out. Missouri State, nicknamed the Cardiac Bears, has been king of the comebacks this season. The Bears scored 28 second-half points to rally from a 13-10 halftime deficit to top SIU 38-28. Missouri State is dominating the second half of games, outscoring opponents by 69 points. The Bison lead all Valley teams, outscoring opponents by 111 points in the third and fourth quarters. Following their Dakota Marker win, South Dakota State is up 5 spots to number 7 in the polls. Running back Pierre Strong leading the country with 1,142 rushing yards and a national best 7 100-yard rushing games. And he's even better throwing the ball. Strong 3 for 3 this year for 3 touchdowns and an incredible 514.2 passing efficiency rating for his career on 8 passes, highlighted by last week's trick play for a touchdown versus the Bison. With the return of Avante Cox from injury, SIU's star receiving duo of Landon Lenore and Avante Cox moved into the top spot as SIU's all-time best in career receiving yards. And they are just 42 targets away from taking over for the most combined receptions. Lenore is also the active Valley leader in career receiving yards at more than 2,500. Major playoff implications on the line again this week with 2 top 25 matchups.
This weekend's ASUN Conference football slate features number 25 Eastern Kentucky in a road contest against number 1 Sam Houston State. The Colonels are looking to gain ground in the AQ7 rankings with a victory against the Bearcats. Central Arkansas and Jacksonville State are both also in AQ7 action as they face Stephen F. Austin and Lamar. Eastern Kentucky looks to rebound from a tough road loss to Stephen F. Austin. Parker McKinney was 30 of 50 for 273 yards and 1 touchdown. Kickoff time against Sam Houston is set for 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN+. Jacksonville State finished their matchup with Abilene Christian with 497 yards of total offense, collecting 225 yards through the air and 272 yards on the ground in the first ever meeting on the gridiron with the Wildcats. Running back Josh Samuels ran for 119 yards for the Gamecocks and scored twice. Through the air, P.J. Wells hauled in a team-best 87 yards on 5 catches. Currently, Jacksonville State tops the FCS with 5 defensive touchdowns so far this season. The team is 5th in kickoff return defense as well. Today's game will be broadcast on ESPN+. Kickoff time against Lamar is set for 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. The Central Arkansas offense has continued its strong play this season and ranks 7th in the nation with 464.6 yards per game. Last week against Texas Wesleyan, the Bearcats rolled up 538 yards on total offense by halftime. The Offensive Player of the Week, Braylon Smith, completed 13 of 17 passes for 410 yards and tied his career high with 5 touchdown passes. Third-year sophomore and wide receiver Tyler Hudson caught a 93-yard touchdown pass late in the first quarter to break the UCA career record for receiving yards. The Bears finished the game with 664 yards of total offense, the 4th best total in school history and the most since 2007. Defensively, UCA were even more dominant, holding the Rams to 150 yards of total offense and a -3 net yards on the ground. The Bears host Stephen F. Austin on Senior Day at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. The game will be broadcast on ESPN+.
Another great week in Big Sky football is behind us as we look back at Week 10. Sacramento State and Montana State remain locked in a tie for first place in the Big Sky standings after the Hornets picked up a win over Cal Poly, and the Bobcats came out of their top 5 matchup with a 23-20 victory over Eastern Washington at the Inferno. The Bobcats' stifling defense held the Eagles' explosive offense to 20 points, 17 first downs, and 314 total yards. The victory moved the Bobcats to number 3 in both national polls, where they're joined by 4 other Big Sky schools in the top 25. Pacing Montana State's defense this past week was senior linebacker Troy Anderson, who earned Player of the Week honors for his performance. He joined me earlier this week to discuss the honor, as well as being named a finalist for the Campbell Trophy Award. Let's take a look. Out of the 8 victories that you and your program have had this season, where would you say this one ranks for you?
I mean, obviously kind of right up there at the top. As the year goes on, every game gets bigger, and going and playing a great team like Eastern and coming out with the win was huge. And like you said, our defense played well and our offense did too. We were joking. I mean, Isaiah Fonse and Lance McCutcheon, they were probably a little deserving of some awards too. But yeah, it was awesome win for the program, and yeah, excited to keep going.
You're a finalist for the Campbell Trophy Award, which is essentially an academic Heisman. So you've got all the success on the field, but off the field as well. What does it mean to be named the only finalist from the FCS?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. Kind of reading up about the award, it's obviously fairly prestigious, and to be able to, or just to be, I guess, considered in that group of people as a finalist is obviously a huge honor. And yeah, I'm humbled, and it's awesome.
Now, you were recognized for your academic success, but also for the work that you've done in the community. Is there a favorite volunteer project that you've done in your time at Montana State?
Yeah, I guess after my freshman year, we had a group of 10 or so of us. We were able to go over to Poland on a Habitat for Humanity trip, where we built a house out of, I mean, it was like cinder blocks for a really poor and needy family over there. And it was just it was an incredible experience to see how other people live, and then to do some good for some people that really need help.
You can find the full interview with Troy Anderson on Big Sky Social. And with Week 11 set to kick off, here's a rundown of all the action. And that's all for the Big Sky. Be sure to follow at Big Sky FB for around-the-clock coverage.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Bryant in the Big South Network studio with a look at today's schedule. Former Northeast Conference rivals Robert Morris and Monmouth meet today for the first time since 2014. The Hawks are looking to improve to 6-0 in the Big South standings, as well as extend their Big South win streak to 16 games. The Colonials are seeking an end to their 8-game skid in road contests. Monmouth has won the last 3 meetings with RMU. Today's Hampton at Campbell matchup features a couple of the Big South's top receivers. Campbell's Caleb Sneed leads the conference with 63 receptions for 964 yards and 10 touchdowns, and had 198 receiving yards last week at James Madison. Hampton's Roman Copeland is averaging more than 27 yards per catch and had 101 yards on just 2 catches last week in the Pirates' win over Gardner-Webb. Charleston Southern visits Gardner-Webb for its final Big South game of the year, and the Bucks are seeking their 5th straight win over the Runnin' Bulldogs. It is Senior Day this afternoon in Boiling Springs, and Gardner-Webb is looking to get back on track after dropping its last 2 games by 1 possession. Quarterbacks Jack Chambers of CSU and Bailey Fisher of Gardner-Webb have a combined 28 touchdown passes this season. Wrapping up today's league slate is Kennesaw State at North Alabama. The Owls carry a 7-game win streak into the matchup and are seeking their first ever 6-0 Big South record. Kennesaw State quarterback Xavier Shepard has thrown 4 touchdown passes in back-to-back games. North Alabama is playing its home finale and has scored at least 30 points in its last 5 contests. Lions defensive back KJ Smith leads the Big South with 6 interceptions. That's a quick look at today's schedule. Enjoy all the games today and be sure to follow Big South Football on ESPN Plus and on social media at Big South Sports.
Hi, I'm Denise Thompson, and I am joined by Craig Haley of Stats Perform and Sam Herder of Hero Sports for another episode of FCS All-In. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Doing real well, Denise. Thank you.
Doing good, thanks.
I feel like every time I talk to you guys, I'm like, oh, what a weekend. I mean, but I guess that's a good thing when you're saying what a weekend, because the surprises keep coming. And for one of those, Craig, I would say, is it a surprise, with 5 Big Sky teams in the upper half of the top 25 polls? Is that what you predicted at the start of the season?
Whew. I knew it was going to be a terrific year for the Big Sky, but I mean, to be, 5 teams in the top 12 this week in the Stats Perform poll was incredible. And I mean, I think going into the year, you just kind of, flip-flop Weber with Sacramento State. I mean, where we're at now. I mean, Weber, being the 4-time defending champ, deserved to be the favorite, but obviously I haven't had the year they wanted, and Sac State's really done well. I mean, the difference for the Big Sky is getting Sacramento State, Montana State all back in the mix. That's what's made the league so strong. Everybody knew it was going to be strong, but this is really exceptional this week.
For you, Sam, he's talking about the Big Sky, but there's a ton of conferences right now where that title race is just getting so close. What would you say is the best conference title race going on right now?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of good races going on right now. One game.
You're always like, plenty of this, plenty of that. You got to make a decision.
I think right now I think the Southland could get the most interesting, just because you have UIW and SLU. They're both have 1 loss in the conference right now after UIW just won. But I mean, Nichols is 4-2 in the conference. They've won 3 straight games. Their 2 losses are to SLU and UIW. Their 2 remaining games are against SLU and UIW, because the Southland is doubling up on games. And so if Nichols is the hottest team in that conference right now and they win out, all of a sudden you have, a 3-way tie in first place at the Southland. I don't know what the tiebreaker is, because Nichols will have beaten both and would have lost to both as well. And so there could be some crazy tiebreaker scenarios going on in the Southland.
What about you, Craig? What would you say is a good title race going on?
Southland's a good one. I'd go Southern Conference. I mean, you have 3 teams tied: Chattanooga, ETSU, Mercer for first place right now, but a game behind is VMI, the defending champ. It'd be odd to have 4 teams coming out of the Southern Conference to make the playoffs, but it is possible here. I think 3 is looking real good. The thing is, Mercer finishes with the other 2 co-leaders, Chattanooga and ETSU. If they sweep them, they're the automatic bid. If they don't get a sweep, then they're talking at large, and they wouldn't have those 7 Division I wins that are, preferred in the selection criteria. So I think that's a fascinating race. VMI can surely get to 8-3, and right now they're a game behind in the standing. So there are 4 teams here in the mix. Probably going to come down to which 3 make it.
We're talking a little bit about in the mix, but for you, Craig, what's the most surprising first place team in the conference standings right now? Oh
yeah, I think there's always somebody. This year it's UT Martin in the OVC. I mean, they were 3-4, I believe, in the spring. They were 4th place in the preseason poll, but they've been phenomenal under, Jason Simpson's been there a long time. He's 2 wins away from 100 in his career. They're certainly the surprise. I just think they've been phenomenal all year. I mean, Keon Howard's their transfer quarterback has been the difference maker. They run the ball. Their defense is much improved from the spring. So UT Martin in the OVC.
Well, we have a couple weeks left of the regular season, and as we know, anything can happen. But I'm sure both you and Sam will keep your eyes on it all and keep fans up to date with it. So for you, Sam, we want to talk about, high caliber teams. One of them is Sam Houston State, right? So can you just talk about the defending national champion season to date?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing what they're supposed to do. They are getting a lot of flack with their strength of schedule, but you look at the top three teams. Sam Houston, their strength of schedule is 65th in the FCS. James Madison's is 53rd. Montana State's is 50th. So it's not like Sam Houston has an egregious strength of schedule, compared to those other teams. They're all kind of in the same ballpark. Now, you have the Dakotas that are in the 20s. I think Eastern Washington is in the 20s. And so obviously when you compare that, strength of schedules are a bit different. But as far as the top three teams, their strength of schedules are all in the same ballpark, like I said. And I think Sam Houston is doing what they're supposed to do against inferior opponents. They've had some dominating wins. I think it is okay to look at the spring season as one of several quote unquote data points when you're trying to get the entire picture of who is the best team in the FCS. And I mean, we know Sam Houston can hold up physically now compared to past teams because we saw them do it in the spring. We know Eric Schmidt is one of the best quarterbacks because we saw it in the spring. Ramon Jefferson's a special talent. Jaquez Ezzard is a special talent because we saw it in the spring. Those players aren't any less players because they're playing, weaker opponents this fall. And so I think they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And even with the strength of schedule not as strong as, maybe like a North Dakota State or an Eastern Washington, I still think they'll get the benefit of the doubt just because they are the defending national champions.
Talking about top players, Craig, Stats Reform recently updated the Walter Payton and Buck Buchanan Award watch list. Can you explain to fans the voting process for those awards?
We're only 2 weeks away, Denise. We have a national panel. Sam's part of the panel, 50 voters. What we do is we compile a list of nominees with input from the conferences, and then we'll narrow down the list for the final vote. The Payton and the Buchanan Awards are the offensive and defensive players of the year. It'll be the same thing with the Rice Award for freshman of the year, the Eddie Robinson for coach of the year. But yeah, in 2 weeks, we'll vote after the regular season for the top individual awards in the FCS.
Top individual awards. These two names have just been, been on repeat for everyone right now. Sam, Eastern Washington's Eric Barrier and Southeastern Louisiana's Cole Kelly. I probably didn't even need to say their schools. I probably could have just said their names. They have been performing at such an elite level this season. What can those two do to separate themselves from each other?
It's been a really fun kind of 1A and 1B race between the two. And at the start of the season, it looked like Barrier was going to kind of run away with things with the ridiculous numbers he's put up. But he has the last two games, he has faced the best two passing defenses that he's seen this season, and his numbers aren't as high. And he'll play another good defense this weekend against UC Davis. And so I think for Barrier to kind of get back on track, he needs to show that he can put up some big time numbers against some of the better defenses that he'll face. With Cole Kelly, I think he'll continue to put up big time numbers. He's been steady throughout the season. And so it might be hard for each one to really separate themselves if they put up big time numbers, because it will just be whatever the voters prefer. But I do think while those have been 1A and 1B, I do think there should be a 1C in the conversation as well. And that's Pierre Strong Jr., the running back from South Dakota State. He leads the FCS in rushing yards, second in rushing touchdowns, third in yards per carry. He's doing it against good defenses. He ran for, I think it was like 150 and 2 touchdowns against the best defense in the FCS, North Dakota State. And he's viewed as a 4th round NFL draft pick right now. And that's pretty rare to be an FCS running back and get drafted that high. I mean, even James Robinson didn't even get drafted, and he's doing pretty well. And so I think Pierre Strong should be in that discussion as well when we're talking about 1A, 1B. Who's it going to be? I think he certainly belongs in that conversation too.
And I think you mentioned a few good things, Sam, and maybe those that are voting, can take into account the quality of scheduling the opponents that some of these are playing when it gets down to the nitty gritty, where like you're saying, 1A, 1B, and 1C, how much of that little difference can it get in there on why maybe numbers were a little higher than others. But we'll wait a few weeks, to find out, what those initial finalists will be. And then, hopefully giving the voters a little bit tougher time as these numbers still begin to play out as we round out the end of the regular season. But talking about rounding out, a lot of drama, Craig. And that comes with conference realignment, which seems like the two words that are also on repeat. And with that, can the FCS overcome, future losses of the James Madisons, the Sam Houston States, the Jacksonville States, all making those announcements recently to switch out?
Yeah, it's a good question and a disheartening kind of topic for the FCS level to lose those kind of programs, and they will. It's similar to Appalachian State and Georgia Southern moving on to the FBS level. I think it was after the 2013 season. I think the difference was when App State and Georgia Southern left, they weren't quite at the very top that they had been in prior decades. Here, James Madison and Sam Houston are the two of the elite programs right now. So if there's good news, it's the FCS levels on, this year's the most schools they've ever had, 128. There's always new schools that kind of, take it to another level and become powers. There's always going to be somebody to replace the ones that are lost. It's just kind of tough to lose two of the ones that are right now at the top with a few other programs.
Agreed. But like you said, the teams are coming in and there's beginning to rise. I think so much this season we've been able to look and there's names that maybe have been a little different, that they've maybe been at maybe the middle of the pack of their conferences for a while, and now they're beginning to rise, with the difference in just recruiting, what's different. So we will keep an eye on all of that and more as we continue out the regular season and then as we head into postseason play. But definitely happy to be able to have the chance to talk to you, Craig, and Sam this week on all the different things going on with FCS football. So once again, always happy to have you guys on FCS All-In. And until next time, please take care.
When the preseason poll came out in August, November 13th was circled on many calendars as the top two teams, Fordham and Holy Cross, were slated to face off. Fast forward 3 months, and here we are with the 4-0 Rams versus the 4-0 Crusaders. Hi, I'm Maria Tribal Peace for FCS All-In. The Week 11 matchup we've been waiting for is finally here, and if the Crusaders win, you'll get to see them hoist the trophy for the third straight season. If Fordham wins and Colgate beats Lafayette, we'll have another big matchup in Week 12 when the Raiders host the Rams. If Lafayette wins, Fordham can claim the championship on Saturday. Other action this weekend includes a pair of noon kickoffs. Georgetown will face Lehigh on ESPN+, and Army will host Bucknell on CBS Sports Network. Ayir Asante was the star for Holy Cross last week, catching 3 touchdown passes as the Crusaders cruised to a 35-10 win over Lafayette. He finished with 9 catches and 137 yards in the win. Fordham's offense was rolling as usual, with Tim DeMorat throwing for 3 touchdowns, including a pair to Fotis Kokosoulis in the 41-20 win over Georgetown. Zach Davis added 103 yards rushing and 2 scores. Here's a look at the two teams head-to-head in the stats this season. Both are ranked 1 and 2 in offense, but the Crusaders had the edge on the defensive side, allowing a league-low 19.9 points per game. The biggest disparity is on defense, with yards allowed as Holy Cross is ranked first and Fordham is ranked last in the league. I'll be in the Bronx for that game, so be sure to follow all of the action and catch the highlights on social at Patriot League TV, and we'll see you back here next week.
Week 11 is here in CA football, and there's several big games on Saturday's slate. We start with an in-state battle in Williamsburg between 2 of the league's top 3 teams as William & Mary host James Madison. It's a matchup of the Tribe's league best rushing attack, which averages over 200 yards per game, against the Duke's defense that is number 2 in FCS, giving up only 63 yards per game on the ground. William & Mary head coach Mike London knows the JMU defense provides a formidable challenge.
Yeah, they're the complete package in terms of they'll get after the passer. They're great run stoppers. They run well as a unit. They can make plays. Individuals that can make outstanding plays.
The variety of weapons in the Tribe rushing attack has caught the attention of Duke's head coach Kurt Cignetti.
They have a lot of speed on offense. Starting with the quarterback. You got to contain the quarterback. Can't let him pull the ball. Run the outside zone. Let him pull it. You can't do that. And he's elusive. And then 28 obviously can fly. And they got different ways to get him the ball and try to get him on the edge.
The other team at the top of the CA standings, 8th-ranked Villanova, returns home to face a Stony Brook squad that's on a 3-game winning streak. As the Wildcats try to move one step closer to a conference title, head coach Mark Ferrante says the formula is simple.
we're just going to have to, again, try to play consistent, try to minimize the penalties, try to win the turnover battle, try to play, assignment football, alignment and assignment football.
The Seawolves are playing as well as any team in the CAA over the past month, and head coach Chuck Priori says winning the turnover battle has been a big key.
3 really good weeks of creating havoc, I'd say, and being able to get the turnovers. We've gotten ourselves back on point with that, which has really helped our field position and time of possession. So I'm real pleased how they played.
Richmond and Delaware both are riding 2-game winning streaks coming into Saturday's contest. The Spiders recorded a season-high 7 sacks in last week's victory over Towson and have 13 over the past 2 games. Blue Hens head coach Danny Rocco says it all starts up front for Richmond.
I think it starts up front with that defense, not minimizing any other part of it. But I think, what you see when you turn on the film is a front 4 or front 7 that really attacks and tries to create havoc against your offense.
Blue Hens quarterback Zach Gwynn is coming off his best performance of the season in last week's victory over William & Mary, and Spiders head coach Russ Huseman has taken note of his growth.
He's just getting better and better. And that's what happens, when you don't play a whole lot and then all of a sudden you get thrown in the mix, you got to kind of get yourself to a point where you're used to the offense, used to playing, seeing things. It's easy to do in practice, but once you get with live bullets, and he has gotten to a point where he's legitimately hard to defend.
Here's a look at the schedule around CAA football.
What's up, everyone? Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bring you an Ivy League football preview for week number 9 as we take you around the Ancient 8. And as we always love to do, we'll break down the schedule, but we will also right now take a look at the Ivy League standings for week number 9. Now let's take a look at the slate of games we have on the schedule here in week number 9, and we'll start up in Cambridge where Harvard plays host to Penn. Now, Penn's offense went non-existent last weekend against Cornell. Their defense was ready to play, but their offense, which usually can put the ball in the end zone, couldn't find the end zone all throughout the game. So they will have to get back on the right track offensively against one of the better defenses in the Harvard Crimson. Now, Harvard did what they wanted to do against Columbia. They took all of their frustration out against the Lions last weekend in a great win, which got their offense back on the right track. So we'll see if that can continue in this matchup against Penn. Brown travels to Manhattan to take on Columbia, and for Brown, it's all about their defense, in my opinion. Can they consistently get stops? If they can get stops on defense, we know their offense knows what to do with the football, and they can score the ball at will. But it's all about their defense being able to get off the field on third down and shut teams down inside the red zone. For Columbia, they're on a 2-game losing streak. They have to get back to basics. And for me, I think it starts with their run game. If they're able to run the football, everything else offensively plays off that. So in my opinion, can they establish a ground game against Brown will be what to watch for early in this ball game. Yale takes on Princeton, and this is a Nolan Grooms fan account right here because this dude is playing phenomenal. It would surprise me if he doesn't get the Ivy League Offensive Player of the Year when it's time to award the Bushnell Cup because he has been flat out balling for the Bulldogs. Now, Princeton, their offense and their defense looked flat last weekend against Dartmouth. They really got handled at the point of attack, which is rare to see for a Princeton football team. Can he get back on the right track against a team in Yale that's playing really hot right now on both sides of the ball? And lastly, we take a look at Cornell traveling to Dartmouth to take on the Big Green. And for Cornell, I just love the progress we're seeing from the young freshman quarterback that's finding ways to win games for the Big Red. He's doing it with his arm. He can do it with his legs. He's going to have a tall ask in this ball game to try to get past this very tough Dartmouth defense, which may be the best defense in the Ivy League. And we saw this defense last week against Princeton score the ball, had an interception return for a touchdown. They harassed Princeton's offense all throughout the game. And offensively, we saw them establish a line of scrimmage, make plays in the passing game, but also were able to run the football when they wanted to. So it was a complete team effort. We'll see if that is able to continue again this weekend against a young Cornell team that's going to be playing a true freshman at the quarterback position. So that's it for this week's edition of the Ivy League Football Preview. For more Ivy League football content, keep it locked here on ESPN+.
This is the WAC report for FCS All-In. I'm Eric Danner. The Battle of the Piney Woods gets a lot of attention for being the best rivalry in the WAC, but don't sleep on this week's game for rivalries between Abilene Christian and Tarleton. Only about an hour and a half drive separates the two schools. The Texans check in with a record of 2-2 in the WAC and 5-4 overall. The Wildcats are 1-1 in the conference and 4-5 on the season. These teams have not played since 2013. That matchup was won by Tarleton, but it's Abilene Christian with a 6-3 advantage in the series. This will be at Wildcat Stadium in Abilene, a 1 p.m. kickoff Central Standard Time on ESPN+. Number 1 ranked Sam Houston's win streak is now at 19 games dating back to last season. The Bearcats at home this week in a big matchup in the WAC ASUN Challenge. Sam Houston hosting Eastern Kentucky. The Colonels are currently second in the AQ7 with a record of 3-1. This will be the first ever meeting between the two schools. That will be a noon Central Time kickoff in Huntsville on ESPN+. Stephen F. Austin, coming off their win over Eastern Kentucky, will be on the road at Central Arkansas. The Bears have won 3 games in a row and are 3-2 in the AQ7. That game starts at 5 Central on ESPN+. Lamar is looking for their first victory in the AQ7. The Cardinals will be at home against Jacksonville State for a 4 p.m. Central Time kickoff on ESPN+. And Dixie State hosting Fort Lewis out of Durango, Colorado. The Trailblazers and Skyhawks start things at 7 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN+. For FCS All-In, I'm Eric Danner.
Next up is an inside look as to what's going on in the MEAC.
Patrick Godbolt had 4 tackles for loss and 2 sacks, and South Carolina State held Howard University to under 200 yards of total offense on Saturday as the Bulldogs escaped Oliver C. Dawson Stadium with a 15-12 win over the Bison to remain undefeated in MEAC play. With MEAC Countdown to Kickoff presented by Coca-Cola in town, North Carolina Central needed 2 overtimes to defeat Norfolk State 38-36 to celebrate the Eagles' homecoming in Durham, North Carolina, and snap the Spartans' 6-game winning streak. Isaiah Totten and Latrell Collier each had a rushing touchdown for the Eagles, and Davius Richard threw for 2 scores. Norfolk State's J.J. Davis had the best game of his young career, rushing for 217 yards on 18 carries and 3 touchdowns. On Thursday night, Morgan State picked up its first win of the season, defeating Delaware State 20-14 in front of a national ESPN2 audience. Alfonso Graham and Romella Kimbrough each had a rushing touchdown for the Bears. This Saturday, we'll see Norfolk State hit the road to take on Delaware State, while North Carolina Central will be in the nation's capital to take on Howard. Both conference games will kick off at 1 p.m. on the MEAC Digital Network on ESPN+. Morgan State will hit the road for a non-conference tilt at Albany, with kickoff set at 1 p.m. on Flow Football. And South Carolina State will be home again for a non-conference game against North Carolina A&T State. That game will kick off at 1:30 p.m. on the MEAC Digital Network on ESPN+. For more information on MEAC football and its 15 other sponsored sports, please visit us at MEACsports.com. Follow the MEAC on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at MEAC Sports, and subscribe to the MEAC Digital Network on YouTube.
Next up is a feature on 6-year Southeast Missouri wide receiver Zach Smith, who has put in the hard work to get better and become a leader on the Red Hawks team.
Now in his 6th year with the Southeast Missouri program, wide receiver Zach Smith has put in hard work to get better. His head coach described the type of player Zach is.
Zach is the perfect SEMO recruit. You know, he was under-recruited. He's a little undersized. You know, he's been told his whole life all these type of things, and he's SEMO football. Like, he loves football like I love football. Football has done a lot of amazing things for him in his life. has came here and had to get better. He had to get stronger and all those things. And it's been great to see him, have the kind of year that he had.
Zach described the Southeast Missouri program as a process-driven team that puts in the hard work to get better, no matter how long it takes.
It's basically, just hard work. Like coming here and like Coach Tukes said, being a process-driven team, waking up every day and falling in love with the process, because I feel like society today, everybody wants instant results and instant gratification for, something that they feel they deserve. Well, if you aren't putting the work in and doing what you need to do in order to get to where you want to go, then you don't deserve that. And, SEMO just hard work and just real prideful. And it's just kind of the Red Hawk way, man.
What type of things did Zach work on this past offseason to get better?
One big thing that I did this past spring season was I really honed in on my blocking. And with me gaining, 10, 15 pounds, going from 190 to about 200, 202, just being able to block, outside linebackers, inside linebackers, safeties that are, typically bigger than the slot receiver body. But, I'm pretty solid, so I like my chances whenever I have a matchup. But, just also understanding what a defense is trying to do. Like, it's crazy. Like, most of these people don't really understand, what cover 2 is, cover 3 is, cover 8. Like, knowing what the defense is going to do before they do it is what gives you an advantage as well.
The hard work that Zach has been putting in has not been limited to just on the field.
And as good as a player he is, man, he is just crushing it. He's going to leave here with 2 degrees in December, so he's going to leave with his undergrad and his master's. He's going to take that spirit, that underdog spirit, that work ethic, that drive. Like if he could keep this same mindset that it made him successful here into his work life post SEMO, whether that be in the NFL or in the business world, you just know he's going to crush it.
What does Zach do to stay focused, to be able to succeed both in the classroom and on the field?
Staying focused is really easy, man. It's between you and you. If you allow all that outside distractions, social media, the news, all that to get in your head, and you start creating different scenarios in your head, and this could go this way or this way, when none of it's even happened. You just have to literally focus on what you have going. If you can make yourself better, that's going to make the team better. So every single day we wake up, if you can make yourself better that day, the team got better that day.
The Southeast Missouri team has gotten better over the past 6 years, in part due to Zach's leadership.
We now zero in on what's happening around the Southern Conference during Week 11 of the FCS football season. The race for the Southern Conference Championship is certainly heating up. Our weekly glance at the standings reveal a 3-team dead heat atop the league. ETSU, Mercer, and Chattanooga all sit an even 5-1, with the defending champs stuck right in behind at 4-2. That's VMI's record as we come down the home stretch in conference play. ETSU forced 3 first-quarter turnovers and jumped out to a 21-0 halftime advantage before seeing VMI power back to pull within a score. In the end, though, in front of a record-setting crowd at Green Stadium and behind a strong effort from Quay Holmes, who carried the ball 21 times for 161 yards and scored the first 2 touchdowns on the day, the Bucks held on for a 27-20 win over the Keydets. Chattanooga made it 4 in a row by upending the Wofford Terriers. The Mocs have not allowed a defensive touchdown in 9 quarters, and in those last 4 contests are allowing just 10.5 points per contest. They would end up on top 35-10 in the battle between the Mocs and the Terriers. Western Carolina won its 3rd straight contest in SoCon play. Did so by a single point in a shootout with the Furman Paladins. Western Carolina's 387 passing yards helped the Cats overcome Dominique Roberto and the 4-touchdown performance he was able to put together on the ground. In the end, it was a 43-42 Western Carolina win over Furman. Sanford got the better of the Citadel, 35-14 this past weekend. All 3 phases were effective for the Bulldogs, scoring offensively, defensively, and on special teams. The offense was led by a couple of DeMarcus Ware rushing touchdowns. Defensively, Midnight Stewart had a 94-yard fumble return for a TD, and a 68-yard punt return from Montreal Washington completed the well-rounded effort for the 35-14 win. Every conference game seems critical from this point forward, and there are 4 of them on tap this Saturday. Wofford travels to the Citadel for an all-Palmetto State battle between the Terriers and the Bulldogs. VMI is on the road, also in South Carolina. They'll take on Furman in Greenville. Western Carolina plays host to ETSU, and Chattanooga and Mercer go head-to-head in the feature contest. That one kicking off at 3 p.m. Saturday. 2 of the 3 teams atop the league set to duke it out to stay in the championship hunt. Sanford is the only other SoCon team in action playing outside the league as they take on the Florida Gators in the Swamp Saturday at noon. This has been your look at the Southern Conference in FCS Week 11.
Let's look back at last week's action in the PFL as well as a preview to Week 11.
The season is winding down in the Pioneer Football League with just 2 weeks left on the schedule. Here's a look at some of the most recent action around the league. Last Saturday, Davidson tightened its grip on first place with a 42-15 PFL victory against second place St. Thomas. The Wildcats roared out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, but St. Thomas halved it early in the second. Davidson scored the game's final 21 points to seal the win. The Wildcats ran the ball 65 times for 392 yards and 4 touchdowns. On defense, Davidson's Brian Jacobs intercepted a pair of passes in the fourth quarter to help Davidson secure the win. He was named Co-Defensive Player of the Week. Dayton scored the game's first 14 points, fended off a Stetson second quarter rally, and closed with the final 20 points in a 41-13 victory. Jack Cook completed 18 of 24 passes for 328 yards and 2 touchdowns to aid the Dayton offensive attack. Nick Orikoa ran for 4 touchdowns and Robert Washington ran for 3 more as Valparaiso held on for a 65-55 victory against Presbyterian. After Presbyterian scored the game's first touchdown, Orikoa ran for the next 3 and Washington tacked on a 61-yard run to end the first with Valpo up 28-8. Presbyterian's Ren Heffley, who threw for 7 touchdowns in the game, tossed 3 touchdowns in a 20-point second quarter. Presbyterian would later close within 3 points, but couldn't go in front. Washington was named the PFL Offensive Player of the Week for his performance with 282 all-purpose yards, including 234 on the ground. Valpo kicker Brian Bartholomew scored 11 points in the win and was a perfect 8 of 8 in PATs. Here in Special Teams Player of the Week recognition. Out on the West Coast, San Diego took down Morehead State 10-3. Terrence Smith capped an 85-yard drive with a 1-yard touchdown run with 4:20 left in the third quarter to lead the Toreros past the Eagles. It was the defense that ended this one as Isaac Haney intercepted a pass in the end zone with 5 seconds remaining to secure San Diego's win. He earned Co-Defensive Player of the Week for this outing. In other action, Hunter Cobb cut a 10-yard pass from Austin Day with 50 seconds in the third quarter as Marist held on for a 7-0 PFL victory over Drake. With 2 weeks remaining in the season, here's a look at the standings. Here's the lineup for today's games.
The Southwestern Athletic Conference has named Alabama A&M's Dee Anderson, Arkansas Pine Bluff's Skylar Perry, and Andre Fuller, Florida A&M's Jose Romo Martinez, along with Jackson State's Shadur Sanders, his SWAC Football Players of the Week. Anderson hauled in 7 receptions for a career-high 122 yards and 3 touchdowns. Perry played a significant role in helping the Golden Lions capture their first conference victory over Grambling State. He completed 11 passes for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fuller intercepted a pass at the Golden Lions' 4-yard line and returned it 95 yards to the Grambling State 1-yard line. UAPB subsequently ran out the final minutes of regulation. Specialist Martinez had a perfect night kicking the ball, going 3 for 3 and 2 for 2 on extra points. Sanders completed 25 of 41 passes for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in the Tigers' 41-21 win over Texas Southern.
In 1920, an athletic league was formed and slowly became one of the leading sports associations in the world of collegiate athletics, the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Today, the SWAC is looking towards the next century, growing, supporting, and transforming our intercollegiate sports activities for student athletes and promoting academic excellence. Each SWAC member institution represents a high level of integrity and sportsmanship. We are the SWAC, building champions for life.
As we reach the end of the football regular season, the race for the Southland Conference title is still up for grabs. Week after week, we've seen incredible individual as well as team performances, with more still to come in the final stretch. As we look forward to another weekend of Southland Conference football, let's take a look back at last week's Southland Conference Football Players of the Week, presented by Geico. For the second consecutive week, UIW's Cameron Ward has been named the Offensive Player of the Week. The sophomore quarterback put on a show in the Cardinals' 55-52 upset over 6th-ranked Southeastern, completing 65% of his passes for a school record 610 yards and 7 touchdowns. The performance marked the first time a Cardinals signal caller has thrown for more than 600 yards in a game, and the 9th most yards ever thrown in a game by an FCS QB. The 610 yards also propelled him to the top of the UIW record books, breaking the individual single-season record for passing yards with 3,417 yards and still at least 2 games left to be played. In addition to being named the Southland Conference Offensive Player of the Week, Ward was also named the Stats Perform FCS National Offensive Player of the Week. After setting career best marks in tackles and tackles for loss, Northwestern State's Jamard Volson takes home this week's Defensive Player of the Week award. The junior linebacker came up big with 11 total tackles and 3.5 tackles for loss, ultimately helping the Demons pull off the 28-24 comeback win over HBU. Volson leads the entire Demon defense in total tackles, tackles for loss, and forced fumbles with 54, 8, and 3 respectively. And his teammate Scotty Roblo is awarded this week's Special Teams Player of the Week honor after his contributions in the victory over the Huskies. The freshman punter stepped into handling place-kicking duties for the first time since 2019 and knocked through an extra point as well as a 24-yard field goal. He also averaged 42.8 yards per punt, placing 3 inside HBU's 20-yard line. A big congratulations to Cameron Ward, Jamard Volson, and Scotty Roblo, our Player of the Week award winners. Turning our attention towards this weekend's games, all 6 teams will be in action, kicking off at 2 p.m. on ESPN+, as McNeese and HBU face off for the first time this season. The Cowboys are looking to bounce back from a close loss to Nichols last Saturday, while the Huskies are hoping to take home a win on homecoming. Shortly after that kick, Nichols will host 17th-ranked UIW at 3 p.m. on ESPN3. In the first meeting between these two teams this fall, the Cardinals took home the dub, snapping a 5-game win streak in the series against the Colonels. Having rattled off 3 straight victories since that meeting, Nichols comes into this one looking for revenge. UIW, on the other hand, who has already won the program's most games in a single season, is riding high off last week's upset over Southeastern and looks to continue to add to the win column. The day wraps up at 6 p.m. on ESPN3 as 14th-ranked Southeastern and Northwestern State go head-to-head for the second time this season. The Lions, who won the first meeting and spoiled the Demons' homecoming, are looking to bounce back from last week's tight loss to UIW, while the Demons are hoping to ride the momentum from last weekend's win against HBU and hand the Lions their second consecutive loss for the first time this season. Again, here's a look at the Southland slate for Saturday. Best of luck to all of our student athletes taking the field this weekend.
As always, we appreciate you going all in with us. You can catch every episode of FCS All-In right back here every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell icon to stay up to date on all the latest FCS All-In content. Until next week, let's be sure to keep the conversation going on social media by using the hashtag FCS All-In.